Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. That was very nice. Our speaker today is Ron Greer, and his topic is supporting those who mourn. This is a follow-up to the talks he gave last fall on his book, The Quiet House. So Ron Greer, supporting those who mourn.
Don, do you think we could turn this over here? We could turn it around to face over here.
Well, I think it'll pick you up.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to get closer to the class.
That's a good
With the
idea.
Microphone.
Yeah.
There
we go. Raise the microphone.
Tom, don't move.
Well, good.
There we go, yeah. Thank you, Sarah.
Okay.
There you go. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
That's good.
I leave it the other way, they'll think I have hair. Yeah. What a pleasure to be with you. I feel, after hearing the announcements and the scripture and the prayer, I feel very optional. We've already had Sunday school. Good gracious, did you hear the ministries referred to in those beautiful announcements about the memorials, about going to Murphy Harpst, and I didn't know what all ministry you were referring to, but
Home stretch.
yes, yeah, and I don't know what home stretch is, but I bet it's tremendously valuable.
We'll tell you.
Okay, good gracious, it feels like we've had Sunday school. Going back to that first announcement, though, about the memorials, we have entered that era. You know, we have lost our parents years and years ago. We have lost friends. I hope none of you have lost a child. But now we've entered the era that we are losing our friends, we're losing spouses, and we want to be of support. We want to find how we can best turn to those, perhaps in our class, perhaps in our neighborhood, perhaps in our family. We want to turn to those who are suffering the loss of a spouse. We want to turn to those who are suffering the loss of other dear family members and dear friends. But that tends to be the one that is the most tender in our era of life, is the loss of a spouse. It is in the field of thanatology, the study of death and grief. It is well understood that the death of a parent is associated with one's past. The death of a spouse is associated with one's present. And the death of a child is associated with one's future with the child, and then the child's future beyond our lives. But back to the death of a spouse, and this is what we were talking, for those of you who were here back in the fall when I presented, this is one of the things we were talking about, the magnitude of the death of a spouse. As your friends lose their spouses, it is associated with their present, with their day in, day out present, with their spouse with whom they've been married perhaps for 40, 50, 60 years. Their lives, can you hear me? Okay. Their lives, good gracious, the warp and woof of the fabric of their lives is so wrapped up together, day in, day out, relying on each other, valuing each other in pragmatic ways, in emotional ways, and then in spiritual ways. And then suddenly that relationship is ended. And that's why the title of the book is The Quiet House. And so many people have said, yeah, that fits. Suddenly, the house feels so empty. Therefore, they need our support like never before. You want to reach out, you want to help, you want to be supportive to those who grieve. The most important single piece of advice I can give you is to slip off your sandals. Recognize how emotionally sacred this moment is for the husband or wife who has just lost their spouse and slip off your sandals. Remember, as Moses was approaching the burning bush, he took one more step and God stopped him. It says, Moses, Moses, come no nearer. Slip off your sandals, for the ground on which you are standing is holy ground. Elizabeth Barrett Browning then used that metaphor in her poem, The Aurora Leigh, as she wrote, earth's crammed with heaven, and every common bush afire with God. But only they who see slip off their shoes. The rest just walk around it, picking blackberries. But only they who see slip off their shoes. Only they who see recognize in the moment of grief for someone who has lost someone as precious to them as a spouse. In that moment of grief, only those who see recognize how emotionally tender and how emotionally sacred that moment is. And in slipping off their sandals, that they then treat that moment with the dignity and compassion and respect that it deserves. Only those who see take off their shoes. As you turn to those who are grieving, recognize the sacred moment and let your compassion be your response to their heartache. You slip off your sandals by matching the tenderness of how they feel with the respect and reverence that you bring. The compassion you share, the empathy that you offer, the love you embody is is offering to them nothing less than the grace of God. Excuse me. I'm trying to project here, okay?
You're doing a good job.
Remember the words of Jesus when Jesus said, when 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I will be with you. When 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, my spirit will be, oh, God bless you. God bless you. There's another Sunday school lesson right there. Thank you so much. When you got up, I thought to myself, please be getting me some water. And given the fact this is the CUC class, I was not surprised that you did. Thank you. Remember when Jesus said to where 2 or 3 are gathered, my spirit will be with you. When 2 or 3 are gathered, when someone is suffering from grief or any other suffering, perhaps surgery coming up, whatever it is with which they're struggling, when you reach out in compassion, when 2 or 3 have gathered in that compassionate moment, Christ's Spirit is there. It becomes sacred ground. Those who are mourning have spoken to me over the years of just how precious it is to have someone come to them and sit with them and support them and be with them. It's seen in the eye contact, the embrace, the warmth of their countenance. It shows that they've slipped off their sandals. Let's think together about how we best engage our compassion in pragmatic ways. I need to wrap up about 10:45. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. First, for those who are mourning, what do they need? They need contact. They need meaningful, loving contact. They need contact with those who care. Visits, calls, letters, casseroles, contact with those who love them. Whatever contact is appropriate to the integrity of the relationship. integrity to the closeness of the relationship. As I have often said, if you don't know them well, send them a card. If you know them moderately well, take them anything from Enrays. If you know them rather well, go by and see them and give them a hug. And if you know them very well, pull up a chair, ask them how they're doing, and listen and listen and listen. In other words, be as personal as the nature of the relationship allows. They need you in that moment of their grief. It doesn't matter if it makes us nervous. And it often does because of the intensity of their emotion, but it doesn't matter if it makes us nervous. It's not about us. It's about them. And we muster the courage and we drive over and we knock on the door. If you've ever wondered about reaching out, about how important it is, remember when you were there. That's your GPS. So reach out, make contact. Next, if this is a friend for whom with whom we are closer than it just being a card or pastries from Enrays, then what they need is your caring presence. It's all about being fully present. The journey of grief is one of the loneliest journeys anyone will ever take. Your presence makes all the difference. Your presence, being fully present, lets them know that they are connected. And one of the things about grief that we all know, for everyone who's been there, is the reason it's such a lonely experience is that emotionally, it ultimately is one that we have to take, a journey we have to take by ourselves. It's taken internally. We heal, we work through our sadness, we work through our loss internally, and therefore it is nothing less than a gift of God if someone who in the Spirit of God comes to us to keep us company in what is otherwise a terribly lonely journey. Contact. Woody Allen once said 80% of life is showing up. 90% of supporting those who mourn is showing up and being with them. Present, being fully present, being available, a moment in which they have, and this is important, a moment in which they have your complete and undivided attention. They see it in the eyes. They know that you are there for nothing but their need. They know that you are there for no one but them. They feel it from your heart and they see it in your eyes. Presence, it has been said, being present. Presence, it has been said, is a noun and not a verb. It's a state of being, not doing. In a world that promotes doing something, being there may sound pretty passive and lame, but in the time of loss, there's nothing more important than being there. It is well documented that those who are supported by family and friends in this way most successfully work through their grief. When in doubt, go, be present. As I once heard it said, I don't need you to light up my world. I need you to sit with me in the dark. I have said this to countless people over the years, and they always, though, are concerned. This presence thing, being present, doesn't seem to be enough. They want to know what to say. What do I say? And then I express to them, I do my articulate best in expressing to them, this isn't creative writing. This is This is an emotional presence, and that's what's powerful, and that's what's healing, and that's what makes a difference. Your caring, your compassion are far more eloquent than any words you could ever choose. And then I will say to them, remember when you were there? Remember when you lost your loved one? Remember when you were in the receiving line following the memorial service in the fellowship hall? Remember when you were there? Remember? You don't remember a single word anybody said, but you remember the faces and the embraces. Say amen, church. You remember the faces and the embraces. Our words are not what matters. Our loving presence, our compassionate presence is what matters. And then having made my case with that kind of strength, then I will pause with this person with whom I'm speaking, and then they will reply, yeah, I know you're right. I know you're right. But still, I want to know what to say. And I tell them I certainly respect that because I don't want to step up to the bereaved and make some bonehead remark either. This is what to say. I love you. I'm so sorry you're having to go through this. And know that I am here for you. Whatever, put it in your words, obviously, not mine. Put it in your words. But essentially what the bereaved need to hear is, I love you. I'm so sorry you're having to go through this, and know that I am here for you. I love you. Express words of love. No, I'm so sorry you're having to go through this. Express words of empathy. And know that I am here for you. Express words of compassion. But remember, your presence is what ultimately matters. Next. If this is someone who is very close, they will need the support of your heartfelt empathy. Everyone needs a special few, perhaps two or three, who are very close and who can be with them in the depth of their pain, to walk with them through it. And you may be one of those few. They will need you near. They will be praying for God's support, and you may be a part of the answer to that prayer. 40 years ago, Karen and I lost our son, our 2-year-old son, Eric, in an automobile accident. It was several weeks after Eric had died, and our other son was also in the accident, and he was in the den on that particular morning he was in a body cast from his injuries. I had gone back to church. I'd gone back to work, and Karen was standing in the kitchen cleaning up from the breakfast dishes alone. She told me about it later. And she was in tears, and you can imagine a grieving mother. She was in tears and she was in prayer, and she was praying as she did the dishes, God, help me. Please help me. Please help me make it through this. And as she finished that prayer, the phone rang, and she answered it. And it was her good friend, Susan. And Susan asked Karen with a tone of concern, Karen, are you all right? And Karen said, I am now. Okay. They will be in prayer. Please, God, help me make it. And you can be the answer to that prayer. Empathy. How are we doing? Empathy. We may have talked about empathy before. I always compare it to sympathy. Let me do this quickly. The let's break the word down. Both empathy and sympathy, the root of both words is pathos, is from the word pathos, meaning suffering. So both sympathy and empathy have to do with suffering. Sympathy is lighter than empathy. So sympathy, it's a good thing, but it's not quite as deep as empathy. The sim in sympathy means with suffering, with someone in their suffering. The M in empathy is in suffering. So sympathy means I am with you in your suffering. Empathy means I am in your suffering with you.
Wow.
It means that I am, the key word for sympathy is presence. And to be present is a good thing. I was talking about it a moment ago. It's a good thing. But the key word for empathy is resonance. Not only am I present, but I am focused on your feelings. I'm listening to your heart. I am listening to your words. I am resonating with you. And for those 2 or 3 closest friends, I'm coming back. Sorry. They were thinking Elvis has left the building. With empathy, they know they've got a soulmate. With empathy, they know that a connection has been made and it's a gift of God to them. Moments of empathy come from the heart, but they're seen in the eyes. Those moments can be transforming. Let me tell you a quick, this one has to do with suffering, but not specifically with grief. A quick, as we say in the South, a quick story. A friend of mine, physician in South Carolina, retired, and he now works with various hospitals in South Carolina in a consulting capacity. And he was at one of these hospitals, and one of the physicians that day was about to go and with his residents and make calls in the hospital rooms. And he asked John if he'd like to go with him. He said, "Sure, I'd be glad to." So they went to this one lady's room. She was a patient there about to be discharged. And she had a very aggressive form of cancer. And so he talked with the residents in the presence of the lady, talked with the residents about her diagnosis, her prognosis, and then the details. And then they did their back and forth with questions with the residents. And they were through, about to wrap up. They were about to leave. And the physician turned to my friend John and said, "John, is there anything you would like to add?" And John stepped up to the bed of this lady, and John said, I can hear his voice. He said, Christina, I forgot to mention this. Christina was just like I would have been. She was just so nervous, and she had aggressive cancer. She was wringing her hands the whole time. She was so nervous. And he stepped up to her and he said, "Christina, you have got the busiest hands I have ever seen. May I hold them?" Wow.
Wow.
Here's a doctor asking her, "May I hold your hands?" And John sat on the side of the bed and he held Christina's hands. And there they held hands as they talked about her upcoming treatments. They playfully talked about her upcoming wig and even where she went to church. And they finished their conversation together. He patted her hand and they all said goodbye. The next day, her physician was back in her room, and it was time for discharge. And he said, "I hope everyone has treated you well here." And she said, "Oh, yes, everybody's been wonderful." And she mentioned various staff members. And she said, "And you know that doctor who came with you yesterday, the one who held my hands? After we talked, I knew I could make it through this. As John was later to put it, she wasn't healed, but she was made whole. She had her confidence. She felt a connection. That's what we bring. That's what we bring to those who are suffering. That's what we bring to those who are mourning. Next, they need for us to listen to them. What we will hear is far more important than anything we could say. Ask how they're doing and want to know. For those who are mourning, professional counseling is very rarely needed. What is needed is for someone who is caring enough to go by and see them, kind enough to ask how they're doing, and wise enough to listen. Stephen Covey of the famous book 7 Habits wrote, "Most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply." They're either speaking, and this is painful, for all the times that you and I have been guilty of this. They're either speaking or they're preparing to speak. Okay. Someone wrote it so what I'm underscoring here is when we are in the presence of someone who is mourning, we are students. We're there to listen. We're there to learn about their life experience. We're there to listen. As someone put it very bluntly, show up and shut up. Never assume we know how they feel. Be very quiet. Get with them where they are. That's the point, not to get them where we are. And never under any circumstances, let me give you a heads up here, never under any circumstances say the 6 most distancing words for those who are mourning. And they are, I know just how you feel. They're there. Because we don't. We have never had their unique experience. We aren't who they are, and we have never had their hearts broken in just the way they have. The words are intended to be comforting, but they have unintended results. They say, I know just how you feel, say, I'm not really listening because I already know how you feel. Which leaves them feeling even more alone. Again, we are students of how they feel. To be supportive is to refine the art of listening. Anytime someone is struggling, anytime someone is suffering, anytime someone is grieving, the litmus test for me of the success of that visit is, at the end of that visit, did they feel heard? If they did, it was successful. If they didn't, if I didn't bring my complete attention to them, I failed. It's not, I've heard countless times people talk about the value of someone stopping by to visit. Virtually never do they quote anything that the visitor said. It's not what they heard, it's that they were heard. Okay, let me move along here. By the way, the other tremendous value is the value of the person getting to talk. Whenever something emotional happens, whenever some event happens that's got an emotional component to it, then we are infused with them. I'm sure we've talked about this before. Infused with emotional input. It throws us off balance. It throws us into disequilibrium. The way we balance, the way we right the ship from the input is with output, to have the chance to be able to talk it out. I learned this, I wish I could take credit for it, but I learned it completely by accident. Graduated from seminary at Candler in 72. For the next 6 years, I was a parish minister. I would have periodically someone in my church ask me if I would do a relative's funeral. Perhaps their father had died. And they were a member of my church. The father was not. I'd never met him before. And I would say, of course, I'll be glad to do his funeral. And I would say, I want you to get all of your siblings and your mom together, 6:30 tomorrow afternoon at your house. Let's meet in your den. I want you to come prepared with two things. I want you to bring your stories of your father's life. Number two, I want you to bring your adjectives of how you would best describe your father so we can celebrate his life in that service the next day. So I'll have the stories to tell and the way that I can describe the life of this man. Okay. We would meet at 6:30 for the next hour and a half. They would tell their stories about their father's life. We would have the service the next day. After the service, the family members at the reception would drift over to me and they would give me the obligatory attaboys. Oh, you did such a good job. That's required, you know. And then they would get to what mattered. They would say, and thank you for getting, I mean, sometimes tears would come to their eyes. They would say, thank you for getting us together yesterday. Thank you for inviting us to tell our stories. It was like each of them were putting their album of their memories of their dad together as they were sharing those stories and were recalling all of those beautiful times together. Invite them to tell their stories. Next, forget the cliches. Cliches are positive, you know, to those who are grieving. Cliches are positive, well-intended, and they rarely help. This is why most cliches have a positive spin, and they are designed to get the person who is mourning out of their pain, and they can't get out of their pain. They have got to work through their pain. Proverbs 25:20 says it very well. It says it bluntly. Like vinegar on a wound is one who sings songs to a heavy heart. Wow. Instead of trying to get them out of the ditch, jump in the ditch with them. What is needed, especially early on in one's pain, is support, closeness, and understanding, not cheerleading. This is how I wrote of this idea years after our 2-year-old son Eric's death. What greater gift can be given than the nearness of a loving friend who accepts you where you are without trying to change you or hurry you out of your pain? I am so sorry this happened to you, or please know how terribly saddened we are for you, is all that is needed. Simply express how you feel. I love you is quite enough, and it is such a gift. Again, far more than our words is our loving, supportive presence. If you care, it will show, and they will know. Next, they need our patience as they heal. I find this very interesting. The origin of the word compassion comes from the Latin patai that has two meanings. One is to suffer with. The other meaning is to endure. To suffer with that same kind of resonance that we're talking about. But then the second meaning of the root word is to endure, is to be patient, to be there for the long haul. One of the single greatest disappointments those who mourn have expressed to me is are the times that people expect them to be farther along than they are. Healing takes its time. Sometime this I find interesting. I may be the only one who does, but to talk about the neurology. Neurologists talk about, yes, I can see, oh gosh, Ron, this sounds riveting. Neurologists talk about what happens in the brain and why healing takes so long. Okay. We have to be patient. We have to be patient. Just as an aside, oh, no. Well, yeah, I could say it anyway. Just as an aside, 2 months after Karen died, my wife died 3 years ago. 2 months after Karen died, I was talking with someone, and they were talking about being at the lodge down on St. Simon's, staying at the lodge. And they were having a glass of wine after, or whatever, after at 6 o'clock on the patio, the veranda. And they said at 6 o'clock every afternoon, a bagpiper comes out and plays for about 20 minutes. I was married to Karen MacDonald Greer. Very Scottish. 2 months after she died, I hear this. The thought crossed my mind, I've got to take Karen there before the obvious hit me. You with me? Healing takes time. Mourning takes time. All the times that those of you who have been there know what I'm talking about. All of the times that we have that moment that we think, oh, I've got to tell them, and then we remember. Healing takes time. As we're supporting those who mourn, listen for where they are and know that they are healthy, they're healing, but it simply can't be rushed. Finally, they need you to bring a casserole. I have said, yes.
Brother, my sister-in-law passed away. He said it depends on the casserole that's brought, but if it's in a fancy dish, they're going to come back to your house and see you.
That's exactly right. That's so funny you would mention that, because just that, thank you. Because what I was about to say, the two things that are way underrated is, number one, a casserole dish with a name taped to the bottom. Exactly. And number two is hearing will bless your heart. Because they are both expressions of love. Y'all, it's time for me to wrap up. Take them a casserole. Do something practical. There are two different ways of supporting those who mourn, and these words are not mine. I borrow them from somebody. To be a firefighter or to be a builder. A builder is what I've been talking about, to be with them over the long haul. That's what I've been talking about the whole lesson. The firefighter is what we're talking about. The firefighter are those who are there in the moment. I have this friend who was talking. Her husband died suddenly, and she was talking about all of this. She was just taken so by surprise. The house wasn't fixed up, it wasn't neat, the yard was, she wasn't ready to have people over, and all these people came over to support her, and they came in. She had neatened the house up as best she could, but while she was visiting with these people who were there to console her, she said, I heard music outside. It was the sound of a lawnmower. Her next door neighbor was cutting her grass. Wow. Those are the firefighters, those people who drop in the moment and do whatever needs to be done. If they need food, get the sign-up sheet going. If they need something from Target, go get it. If they need the grass cut, crank up the lawnmower. It's time to go. It is always a joy to be with you. This is my home away from home. I don't know if y'all want to claim me, but I sure claim you. This is my home away from home. You sit down in the presence of those who are mourning, and you sit with love, and they will see it, and they will feel it. And they may even think of the words of Jacob as he was reunited with his brother Esau. He said, for truly to have seen your face is like seeing the face of God. With such favor have you received me. Thank you.